So imagine you had men who could confer benefit and who were incapable of inflicting cost, and men who could confer benefit but were capable of inflicting cost. I think you'd see winners on that side because of that free rider problem. And that ties into what we'll discuss in relationship to the dark triad, because there's some mystery about why women seem to be attracted to these so-called dark triad traits. And I would say that they're using them as insufficient markers for the ability to or the acquisition of status. And narcissists capitalize on that, right? Because a narcissist looks confident, and lots of confident people are competent. But some confident people aren't competent, but they can fool you.
Yes.
And then I think the other explanation is that if you had to choose between a benefit conferrer who could punish free riders and one who couldn't, you should pick the former.
One who could
deal with free riders, who could and would, had the capability to. And so you see this sort of thing. I really like the Disney movie Beauty and the Beast. I think they got it right. And so there's Gaston in that movie, and he's a narcissist, but he has physical prowess. Like, he can't understand why he's not the guy, but he's narcissistic. And then there's the Beast, who's a beast, but he's tameable. And so he can be a benefit conferrer, and he has the capacity to inflict cost. So one of the big 5 personality traits that the dark triad is most associated with is agreeableness, low agreeableness. And I do think that research psychologists and psychologists in general have a kind of ethical bias in relationship to the agreeableness dimension, and of course women are higher in trait agreeableness than men.
Right.
Reliably, it's about half a standard deviation. It's one of the biggest sex differences, and it's associated with compassion and politeness in the work we've done anyways. And so that's empathy, at least to some degree. Now the question is, what is the ethical utility of lower agreeableness, right? Because you'd think, well, it would interfere possibly with sharing, right? Because if you're more compassionate, more empathic, you're going to feel the hunger of other people, and you'd be more motivated to care for them, let's say. But it's also possible that low agreeableness has something to do with, well, perhaps hunting prowess. That might be part of it, but it also might be part of the solution to the free rider problem. And so women are in a conundrum with agreeableness, right? Because they need a mate who's agreeable enough so they can bond with them and that will care for their children and that cares in general. But they need someone who's disagreeable enough so that they're capable, let's say, of dealing with free riders.
Right. So one way of saying that is agreeable with respect to them, but the potential for being disagreeable with respect to those others when they need to be punished or they need to ward off an attacker.
Right, and you can see that that's a real tight line to walk down. And part of what constrains agreeableness, let's say from a temperamental perspective, so if you're low in agreeableness, let's say, well, you're less empathic, you're more competitive, you're rougher, blunter, tougher, what would you say, at least with regards to the compassion you show to others. And so what helps modulate that? Well, some of that would be conscientiousness. And so in the dark triad types, you see low conscientiousness as well. Really low agreeable, high conscientious types are quite interesting because you can trust them because they'll do their duty, but they're very blunt and direct and harsh. And that can be helpful as well because they'll tell you unpleasant truths even if they hurt your feelings. So there's some utility in that. So you can imagine that agreeableness can be modified, let's say, by conscientiousness. So that takes the psychopathy edge off it, because low agreeableness and low conscientiousness, that's a rough combination.
Yes.
And so, because there's nothing constraining it. And so women are attracted to some degree to the lower agreeable types, and I think that accounts for the bad boy paradox that you described, at least in part. And maybe it takes further experience and wisdom on the part of judicious women to see where they can get the disagreeableness that's necessary, but it has to be hemmed in by something like, well, conscientiousness.
Right. Other personality traits like conscientiousness. Yeah. I mean, one other reason that I think that women are attracted to the dark triad, at least the younger women, is that they're often risk takers. So they will do things like motorcycle jumping or ski jumping or take physical risks, speeding in their cars, or and so the kind of daredevil mentality, and women, at least younger women, find that exciting. But
I wonder if they confuse that with trait openness, right? Because the open types are going to experiment. They're going to try lots of different things, and that daredevil, I don't care, might be not easily distinguished from the capacity to engage in creative problem-solving pursuits, and perhaps with courage as well.
Yeah. So I think courage, and also one of the that people who take risks often in fact have the ability to afford those risks, if you will. So for example, doing some dangerous athletic feat, if you're not an athletic person, you're going to fail at that. And so in some sense, some of these daredevil behaviors, I think, are kind of cues that you have the ability to afford to take those risks. But these guys, these high dark triad guys, are absolutely disastrous as long-term mates. So that they might be exciting for sure. I mean, that's why I think that women, as they mature, stop being attracted to these guys, especially if they're looking for a long-term mate, because these are guys, the dark triad, they're more likely to cheat. They're more likely to seduce and abandon. They're more likely to engage in deceptive mating tactics. And so they tend to be big trouble when it comes to long-term mating.
Yeah, well, it also looks like they value themselves greatly. And, sometimes people value themselves greatly, and so they have high mate desirability in your terminology, or maybe some little corruption of your terminology. And I think the dark triad guys mimic that. It's like, I'm so good I can afford to, distribute my sexual prowess wherever I see fit. And there's some of that happens as men rise in competence hierarchies as well.